the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Thursday, April 29th in the year 2021. And today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Lined up for today's show in segments 2 and 3, Mr. Ryan Roberts, NFL Draft Analyst, will be with us, giving us all the info we will need to know about what's going to happen over the next 3 days in regards to Buckeyes in the 2021 NFL Draft. But we begin today's show with some news that may have startled you, shocked you, or even surprised you when you found out, maybe this is your first time hearing, that Jameson Williams, wide receiver, has entered the transfer portal. At the end, really at the end of the season, and then even at the end of the spring game, before the spring game, I have been hinting at a lot. You're going to find players, athletes that'll be entering the transfer portal that are currently at the Ohio State University. Would it be the running back room? Would it be wide receivers? Would it be somebody on defense? Me personally, I have hinted at the running back position over and over and over again. But for the second time this offseason, a wide receiver has decided to enter the transfer portal. Now, one interesting detail about the transfer portal that I'll give out before going into detail about Jameson Williams and him leaving. The transfer portal is simply that. You're entering a figurative or fictitious portal, you may want to say. It's literally a thing, but it's not like you're going inside of a tunnel. Like, oh, let's go on an adventure. We're going to go and transport from one place to another. Transfer our talents from one place to another, and while we're there, we're physically inside of a portal. No, that's not how it works out. It'd be crazy. I mean, it would be a great way for our imaginations to be able to be a little creative and to say, well, this is how things are going to go. No, that's not it. But you can enter the portal and still go back. The thing about this, along with Mookie Cooper, and every time I think of Mookie Cooper, I think of Michi Johnson, the Mookie and the Michi, those two together. I always get them all mixed up. But Mookie Cooper, wide receiver, just like Jameson Williams, wide receiver, they're realizing there's a lot of talent in this receiver room. Gee Scott Jr. realized it early on, talking about possibly moving from wide receiver to tight end. Let's see how that transition goes. You're not even 225 yet. A couple burgers away, maybe from 225. A lot of good tight ends, but they're 245, 250, maybe 240 on the light end. You got to block guys that are very athletic. You got to get down to the three-point stance, something that maybe you have never done your entire life. We'll see how that goes. DeMario McCall going from running back or receiver or slot to corner. Okay, that's a big transition. I don't see DeMario McCall transferring. Maybe Gee Scott Jr. transferring because I'm not really sure where he fits in on the depth chart or the development of Ohio State players. But with Jameson Williams leaving, it does really speak volumes because last year he did have, I believe, he was number 3 on the team in amount of snaps that he had, 308 snaps. He caught 9 passes, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. He was number 3 in snaps last year, right behind, you guessed it, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. That is according to Pro Football Focus college data. Williams was a former top 100 recruit out of St. Louis. He caught 6 passes for 112 yards and a touchdown as a freshman during the 2019 campaign. I'm excited to see what's next for him. I'm excited to see where he goes next. I am excited to see what his future holds. I'm also excited to see what this means for the wide receiver room at Ohio State. We all saw in the spring game Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. It surely seems like they're going to be on the field quite a bit this season. Julian Fleming, I'm sure a lot of you expect him to be on the field a lot as well. You also think, I do believe, with Garrett Wilson going to the outside, you want to see Jackson Smith and Jigba right there in that slot position. So it's probably going to be a little Olave, Wilson, Smith and Jigba, a little Egbuka, a little Harrison Jr., and then I forget who the other receiver on the top of my dome is that'll be in that rotation. But you're going to see that. Next week, we will talk about, maybe tomorrow, depending on how the first round of the draft goes, we'll talk about what I think else, who else may transfer. Because I don't think the transfer period is over, or those people that are transferred out of Ohio State. I think we'll see more transfers outside of Ohio State very, very soon. Why? There's a lot of talent. Think about this, and I'll close out with this very topic. When you have this quarterback competition that Ohio State has, two guys that are in the same class, and then also you have a freshman in Colin McCord, Quinn Ewers coming in right behind him next year, this is a great problem to have. But also as a youngster, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you want to get on the field, you might not want to wait your turn to get on the field and play the football and wait behind somebody else. I mean, not everybody's going to be a DeJuan Jones who is fighting and vying to try to get playing time, but he understands he will start other places. I do believe DeJuan Jones will start other places, but because of Nicholas Petit-Frere and Thayer Mumford and how good they are, and really his frame, 6'7", 360, it's not ideal for an offensive guard. So I do understand that, but I'm curious. Quarterback, other positions, we'll discuss this later on, what positions might be the position or what athletes we might see transfer out, just like Mookie Cooper and also Jameson Williams. Let's step away very quickly. When we come back, we will be joined by Mr. Ryan Roberts, an NFL draft scout, draft analyst, who will be giving us all the knowledge we need to know, we need to have about Ohio State players in this year's 2021 NFL draft, which starts tonight. But first, check this out. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose brands, specifications, and even the prices you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low, and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in their "How Did You Hear About Us" box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. And when we come back, we will be joined with Mr. Ryan Roberts as we get to know everything we need to know about your Buckeyes in this year's 2021 NFL Draft. And joining us now, after a little bit of a delay, I've been teasing Ryan way more than normal than I do any other guest, and life happens. So we had to push it back. But Ryan Roberts he's an NFL draft analyst. He is with us now. If you're watching via YouTube, you see his face. If you're listening via Odyssey, Apple, or any other podcast app, you're going to hear his voice very shortly. Ryan Roberts, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Jay. I'm good. I appreciate you being so flexible with the real life kind of getting in the way of some things. But I'm excited to be back, man. We're very short to the NFL draft now, so pumped to be on here.
Absolutely, man. I'm pumped. You're pumped. This is your time of year. I'm excited to see all these Ohio State guys go from playing in college to what they'll be in the NFL. And the talk of the town has been Justin Fields before the season, during the season, at the end of the season, and then even now, the whole draft process, it's been Justin Fields this, Justin Fields that. When you evaluate Justin Fields, the quarterback, what do you see?
I mean, I see everything from a physical perspective that you want in a quarterback. You know, he's over 6'2", he's 230 pounds, he's really physical runner. He's a really athletic kid at the quarterback position. I mean, he ran in the 4.4s at his pro day. He's got a very talented arm. Throw the ball through the wall if he wanted to. Everything just seems to be there physically. for whatever reason, I don't know why this is this year. It seems that Justin Fields is the guy that just keeps getting knocked for the most minute details. And I mean, there are some details in his game that do need to be hammered out. You know, he is not the quickest decision maker when we're talking about quick game, you know, timing routes and just being on time all the at a, you know, consistent rate. But those things can be hashed up. Those things can be worked on. The talent that this kid has, the natural accuracy that he has, the athletic ability that he has is astronomical. So he's been a guy that's been very, like, some people have him going third, potentially San Francisco. Some people are mocking him at like pick 32, which is really insane. So it's been very up and down and wildly inconsistent on how people view him. But, I mean, make no mistake about it. If this kid hits, he has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL because the talent dictates that.
The talent is there. I have been talked about and mentioned on here and a little bit on Twitter, maybe not as much as I should have, some of the errors or the things in his game that don't really put him at that number one spot. People go back to high school, Elite 11 camp, all the different recruiting sites. It was Trevor Lawrence and then Justin Fields. In college, even the Clemson-Ohio State thing, Trevor Lawrence won a national championship before Justin Fields even got a chance to play in the national championship himself. So it's always Trevor Lawrence has been ahead of Fields in the rankings, on the field, and everything. And so Buckeye fans get a little bit annoyed, upset, sometimes mad based off the things they see on TV or the things that they are hearing on radio or podcast as well. And they're hoping that Justin Fields goes to a good spot. Instead of going number two overall, they are fine QB2. A lot of people are fine second overall pick. They want him to go to a good spot, and they want a team that can help groom him and help him mature early, help him be the guy that goes to that team and make it be a great marriage. I don't know where you see Justin Fields falling, but as you look at the mock drafts and I know top 10, top 15, everyone's saying, where's he going to fall? Where do you see Justin Fields going, and do you think it's a great landing spot for him?
I think he's going to end up still in the top 10. I think that the team that maybe is going to necessarily draft him, though, is not currently in the top 10. I'm going to
stop you.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
I haven't said this out on Twitter yet. It's going to hit Twitter tomorrow morning, maybe before people check this out. Okay. I think that the New England Patriots at 15 will move into the top 10 to get Justin Fields and make a Cam Newton, Justin Fields quarterback comparison in the offseason. Are we on the same page? It's
fantastic, Jay. You read my mind completely. It is. So there's a few teams, right? We're going to talk about the Detroit Lions at 7. We're going to talk about the Carolina Panthers at 8. We're going to talk about the Denver Broncos at 9, back to back to back. Those teams are trade back candidates. Atlanta Falcons, everybody keeps talking about that one. I think Atlanta's going to be in the trade market, but I think that those teams are the more likely result for Justin Fields, one of those three selections. I think New England's going to be aggressive because, like you said, stylistically speaking, Cam Newton and Justin Fields play similarly. They don't have the same body. Obviously, Cam Newton's a lot taller. And, I mean, well, they're both thick guys, but, like, he's taller and he's like 240, 250 pounds. So, like, they're not the mirror image when we're talking from a physical perspective, but how they win on the football field, the natural talent that they have, maybe the mechanical nature, maybe not being on time all the time as passers, but then the physical running style that they have, the dual threat ability they have, it makes a ton of sense. And New England has Cam now on a 1-year contract. Bring in a guy that plays similarly to him, learn behind him, and perfect the offense. I think that the situation is going to dictate success. And being with a guy like Bill Belichick long-term, I mean, that is about as good a situation you can fall into. And I think it makes total sense for Justin Fields.
I was not – okay, you know me. I'm an Indiana guy. I like the Colts. I like the Pacers, all that stuff. I don't really follow them as much as I used to, as I try to be unbiased in my analysis and my opinion making of whatever I am watching. But at the same time, it would be a conflict of interest if Fields goes to New England and I got to go against a team that terrorized me as a kid. It's like, oh, yeah, well, the quarterback that I really, really like also is playing for the team that I really can't stand. It's funny there how that may actually be what we're seeing. But also, Ryan, I can't prolong this thing yet. We got a lot of guys short amount of time. Yeah. I also made a prediction on Monday's show saying I think there's a possibility. I think that there will be 2 Buckeyes drafted in the first round. I think we'll see a lot of things happening in the back half, the bottom 15 or the bottom second 16 that are drafted. I'm 32 in the first round. I think they'll see some movement. I think a second Buckeye will be drafted in the first round. I did say Davis, Browning, Myers, or Werner. Myers probably on the back part of that group. Am I crazy? And do you possibly see something like that happening?
I don't think you're crazy. I think if there is a player that is going to fit into the latter stages of the first half, for the first round, I should say, I believe it is one of the linebackers. You've heard rumblings both of Baron Browning and Pete Werner having some people with first round grades. If I had to guess and I had to put my name on and stick my name on, I would say they're probably both more likely second round selections. But if a team wanted to bank on the athleticism of Baron Browning, I don't blame them at all. I really don't, because, I mean, the kid, athletically speaking, is a freak of nature. If you can get him into a system and get him into a position that you feel comfortable with, then we're cooking with grease. There's a lot of things to work with here. I just think he's a little far away, so I think that some teams are going to hesitate. I think Pete Werner has a shot, as weird as that sounds. You know that the last few times we've talked, I'm a Pete Werner guy. I have always been a Pete Werner guy. I feel like he's been this just unfairly scrutinized as this white, unathletic, two-down player. But, like, the kid's athletic, man. The kid's flexible. He played that Sam Backer spot that Baron Browning played in 2019. And then he moves inside this year, obviously, and he didn't miss a beat. If anything, he got better. So I think there's versatility to Pete Werner. I think he tested exceptionally well in his pro day. I think that he's a three-down player potentially, and it would not shock me if the last couple picks of the first round, somebody takes a Pete Werner, because after the Micah Parsons of the world, the Zaven Collins of the world, and the Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoas of the world, people are trying to figure out who that fourth linebacker is off the board. You hear Jamin Davis from Kentucky talked about a lot. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of the Ohio State guys, and I really would not be surprised if it was Pete Werner at the end of the day.
Pete's another Indiana guy. I don't like to stick around with Indiana guys and feel like, dude, you're an Ohio podcast. Why are you talking about Indiana guys? Well, there's a lot of talent that comes out of there. But Pete Werner was a guy that making that move from outside to inside, I think it boosted his draft stock. I think a lot of people saw he can play in the box. He can play outside. He led the team in tackles. He didn't lead the team in tackles for a loss. We'll get to that guy later on in the show. But I think he is someone that I think the white aspect is kind of either goes hurting him a little bit. I hate using race. I really do. But it is something that people see when you're evaluating that player because it's a skin color that he has. But Pete Werner was a guy even during the season. I think he surprised people, but also didn't get the credit he deserved because he was a gamer and a guy that can play all three downs.
Yeah, Pete Werner broke my heart once upon a time. It was between Ohio State and Notre Dame, and obviously he ended up at Ohio State. So obviously a really great player there out of the state of Indiana. So tough one that got away from Notre Dame, unfortunately. But Pete, I mean, like you said, the big selling point is he was a damn good Sam linebacker as a junior, and then he went in the inside as a more traditional linebacker set, and he was a damn good player there. So he now, I think, honestly could play Mike Will, I think, is that best two spots for him. But then he could also play Sam. I think that he can play all three spots potentially in a 4-3 defense. And I think that that's going to be very valuable for him. And I think he's a great player and a good kid from all accounts, tested outstanding. He just has so much going for him. And like you said, I mean, yeah, people don't want to talk about the race part, but like black quarterbacks are unfairly scrutinized sometimes too. It happens. Like it is a thing. Like you're going to look at a white linebacker or a white slot receiver and you're going to assume not a great athlete. That's why he's playing that spot. But in reality, Pete Werner is a very good athlete, very flexible. He was a safety in high school. Mm-hmm. So that kind of puts into perspective. And I mean, I think the world of the guy. I really do. I think he's a top 5 linebacker in this class and a stacked linebacker group. And I mean, out of the 2 linebackers coming out of, 4 linebackers coming out of Ohio State, but talking about him and Baron Browning, he's my favorite guy, and he's my top-ranked guy. And I don't think you're going to find much more of a bigger Pete Werner fan than I am. So,
last question about Pete: do you think he could fit a 3-4 scheme inside as one of the 2 Mike backers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As a Mike or Will inside, absolutely in a 3-4 scheme. There's no reason he can't. That scheme will ask usually for guys with a little more length, but doesn't ask the guys to be as much sideline to sideline potential players. So I think he can, and I think that he can do it well. And I think that, again, the more that you can do, this is now going into not the versatility aspect of doing things on the football field, but alignment versatility. He can now fit into multiple schemes, a 4-3 or a 3-4. I think he absolutely can. I think it's an interesting conversation, though, also because, I mean, the Seattle Seahawks were the only team last year in the NFL that played base defense over 50% of the time. So even if you're a 3-4 defense, you're not really playing that base too much anyway. At the end of the day, I think Pete Werner is is a darn good second level defender that's going to make a team very happy.
Baron Browning, why will he be latter part first or early part second and not top half of this draft?
I think when you put him up against a guy like Micah Parsons athletically, he is right there with him. Like they're almost the same size. They're similar athletes. It is a good comparison. The tough part about Baron Browning is we saw him struggle to get on the football fields. And then in 2019, he's playing inside and wasn't great film. Like flashes, of course, because he's a great athlete, but it really wasn't great film. Better film in 2020, playing Sam out in space from depth. But the problem with that is like awesome. Unblocked, working from depth, you can make a lot of plays. You're an explosive athlete. We see your closing burst. That's all fantastic. But the problem, and I just said it, was one team played base defense over 50% of the time. So that Sam backer, that overhang role that he's playing, that's all well and good. But at the next level, they're taking that guy out and they're putting a nickel in. Like that player. That stylistic approach is becoming obsolete on the NFL level. So the real question with Baron Browning is, where does he fit? Can he play Mike or Will full time? Where does he look like on non-base downs, on those downs where it's obvious passing situations, sub packages is the word I'm looking for. Where does he fit best in those situations? I'm struggling a little bit for him because, I'm a big scheme guy, and I'm really struggling to understand where he fits and where he makes an impact on the next level. And you couple that with the fact of like not great production, not a ton of playing time, and then you have to figure out what his best fit is from a schematic perspective. I just think there's some question marks to answer. But like you said, I mean, you can put him up against any linebacker in this class from an athletic and talent perspective. It's just he just hasn't put it on film consistently enough. And unfortunately for him also is, there was an abbreviated season for Ohio State and the Big Ten Conference in general. So there was a lack of playing time again this past season, which is not his fault in any way. But unfortunate circumstances say that he still is still has limited production and still has limited playing time as a football player.
Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers. If you talk about interior offensive linemen, I know that's the new category the scouts like yourself utilize. I still look at position like, he's a guard, not interior, but he is technically interior O-line. But with Davis and Josh Myers, what do you see from them, and where do you see possible landing spots for them? I'm leaning more Josh Myers third round. I know I did say he's possible could go latter part of the first, but I think that center position, it is latter part second, early part third for him. I think Davis is a surefire second-round pick.
I think Myers is a guy that if he does not go on day 2, second and third round speaking, I would be very shocked. And I've actually seen a lot of people start to talk him up on the media side of things, which is finally, I've been waiting for it, man, because I left the summer and he was my top-ranked center heading into the 2021 NFL draft cycle. Like, I was a huge Josh Myers guy. So finally, he's starting to get a little publicity. I will say this. My favorite interview that I've done this draft cycle was Josh Myers, hands down. Usually those interviews last between 10 and 15 minutes. I had him on for like 25, 30 just because I just wanted to keep talking to him. And some teams I know from speaking to him prefer him at center, but there's a lot of teams that also talk about him playing guard. So he could be a guy that plays multiple positions inside. Obviously, he was an offensive tackle recruit that moved inside the guard, and then they needed help at center, so eventually he fit into that role. I think that he has the size and movement skills to be a really good inside zone running scheme center. I think combos to the second level, working with Wyatt Davis, working up to the second level defenders, I think it's fantastic stuff. So I would be surprised if he does not go in day 2 somewhere. And then Wyatt's the same way. We thought that going into the year that Wyatt might be that top guard prospect potentially, might be the first guard off the board, might be a first round pick. Fortunately, 2020 just wasn't as good a season. It just wasn't. I mean, he was banged up a bit, and but he's a good football player. He absolutely is. So I think that he's going to be a rock solid starting level player that a team is going to get lucky enough to get in the second rounds. Just unfortunately for him, didn't have the best season, and then guards, tend to slip a little bit. It's kind of a rare, I don't want to say rare, but it doesn't happen too often where a ton of guards go in round 1. So I think Wyatt is still going to go in the second round, like you said, and I think that a team is going to get a starting level player pretty early in his career.
I got two here really quickly. These are more second round guys, or no, day two guys. One guy last year, maybe some people were saying that he was going to be a first round pick automatically, and Shaun Wade, who slipped. I think he made himself and helped himself with how he looked physically during his pro day. And then Tommy Togiai, dude's just a beast, man. Those two guys, what do you see?
Yeah, Shaun Wade, I mean, we talked about it in the summer, right? Like, I was ready to pencil him in as a top 20 pick, a corner. I was like, dude, like, if he looks this good on the outside as he did at nickel, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, he's long, athletic, looks the part, physical. I'm just like, cool. Fortunately, he didn't have a good season. Like, let's just call it what it was. He was not comfortable at all on the outside and did not do himself any favors. But I think that a team – so first of all, some people were talking about him slipping to day 3. Not going to happen. From everybody that I've spoken to, he's a day 2 pick, like you said, second or third round. Shaun Wade is still valued very heavily in NFL draft circles in the NFL side of things. I do think that some teams are going to try to figure out, because I think that some will say it was his first time playing outside corner full time. It was a weird season, weird off season. They weren't going to have a season at some points. Let's give him a shot, see what he still has outside corner. And there's going to be others that say he's a safety nickel. And then we're going to use him inside, and we're going to use that versatility aspect of where I think that he also lies best when he's talking about his skill set. So I think he's still a day 2 player. I think he's still a good player that still has a lot of upside, that has not hit his ceiling. Fortunately, he just didn't have a great season. On the other side, the guy that did have a breakout year, Tommy T. I'm just going to call him Tommy T because I always mess up his last name. Tommy is super physical. He's your true one tech. I don't know if I want him to play a true 0 because he doesn't have the longest arms in the world. He doesn't have crazy length. But the kid, I mean, just he's overwhelming at times at the point of attack. He has a lot of power, which was evident by the 40-plus reps he did on the bench at his pro day. Like, that is how he wins the football game. He is barrel-chested, super physical, locks you out, strong hands, and that is super valuable for a football team. The trouble with him is, I do think he is going to be a day 2 pick. I think you got that one right as well. The trouble is, though, is what is his upside as a pass rusher? He had 3 sacks this past year. All of them came in the same game, though. So other than that, there's not much evidence of being able to push the pocket consistently. You see it in flashes. So can he put it together? It's possible. But for now, I think that he's a 2-down run stopper that everybody needs. That's super value. That might be, underappreciated from some people, especially in the media side of things. But I think that somebody's going to get Tommy into their camp early, and he's going to play a valuable role for a team.
Do you see a scenario where Wade and Togiai, one technique and then a nickel corner for Wade, start day 1?
I think Tommy, absolutely. Like, I think that he could handle the run game in the NFL right now with how physically he plays. I think Wade, it's possible. It's very possible. But again, I think there's going to be some experimentation with him a little bit. People are going to try to figure out where he fits best. So I don't know if he's going to be pressed into duty early just because people are going to try to see what the best fit is. But if a team drafts him and they're just strictly like, you're a nickel corner, that's all we want you to do. What you did in 2019 is everything that we want you to do. Then I could absolutely say it. I think that he could be that player. But I do think that some teams are going to kind of toy around with where he fits best, which might delay the playing time early on in his career.
I got 3 guys, Ryan, on my little notebook here that are day 3 picks, rounds 4 through 7. I think Sermon's a 4th round guy. I think Cooper goes 5th or 6th round. And no, there's 3 guys. Yeah, Cooper and Hilliard go 5th or 6th round. I don't think the Buckeye will get drafted in the 7th round at all. I'll talk about Tough Boiler here in a second. You and I might be on the same page. I think Sermon was hurt by 2 things. Not having a normal offseason, getting acclimated to Ohio State system properly, the ramping up and then coming back down, then ramping back up for the season really hurt his development and really didn't allow him to learn the offensive line early on in the season like was needed. You saw some early on. I'm sure you saw with Davis and Myers, their chemistry in the O-line interior was hindered early on first few games from not having that offseason. So I think Sermon got hurt from that. Cooper, I have no idea what he's going to do in the NFL. He just 254, 255. I don't know if he's going to be a stand-up guy. I don't really see it. Hand on the ground, maybe too small, 4-3 scheme. Don't see him playing hand on the ground, 3-4, even stand up outside 3-4. I'm not a scout. I've just been kind of doing a little extra work here lately. And then Hilliard, if you give Hilliard a full year of starting last year with his injuries, I think he's a day 2 pick. That's me. I don't know what you see. Ryan, go at it.
I think Justin Hilliard, talent-wise, is possibly a day 2 player. Unfortunately, just with the injury background, he's not going to go until day 3. But I think a team is going to get a value and is going to get at least a very good special teamer and is going to be able to back up multiple positions on the linebacker unit. I think that he is a very undervalued player. I mean, I put out on Twitter one time, who led Ohio State in tackles for loss, and people are naming Cooper, Baron Browning, Tyreek Smith, like all these guys. I'm like, nope, it was Justin Hilliard. So had a really nice season, although it was obviously very short. I think that there's still some developmental potential. The question is, like, can his body handle that development, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just the medical rechecks are going to be so important for him. I haven't heard anything negative on that side of things, so I think he checked out pretty well, which is good. I just think that it's going to be a day 3 flyer for him, probably 4th, 5th round, somewhere in there, but the team could get a tremendous value. And I think he's a good player, though. And Trey Sermon's career was a roller coaster going back to Oklahoma's days. There were some times where he looked like he could be a top 5 running back in this class, and there are other times where you're just like, where'd you go, Trey? And then obviously the latter stages of the year, he was dominant for Ohio State, and then he got hurt in the national championship game, and the offense just kind of went kaputs after that because that was just the rushing element. Like, he was just their best football player besides Justin Fields on that offense the last couple games. So really roller coaster of a career, but he had a nice pro day. He tested athletically well. I think that he is a kid that could be pushed into the latter stages of day 2. I think that there's a possibility he could go in the 3rd round. I think it's very possible. It's just about the consistency element of him because you see the flashes. It's just that he's never been able to put it completely together, but then he tests well. And he was in great shape this year. Hats off to him because at some points in Oklahoma, I was like, hey, might want to lose a little bit of weight. He came in Ohio State this year and he looked fantastic. So might be a player that sneaks on the day 2, maybe more than likely early day 3, but I think Trey Sermon is well liked. And then Jonathan Cooper, I think, is really well liked. I think that Jonathan Cooper had a good season. I think he is relentless. I think he plays a great motor. He's a team captain. He just checks off a lot of those boxes. I know he's going to be a special teams stalwart. Like, I know he's going to do all those things. The question is, 1, why did it take you so long to have production? 2, you still didn't have a ton of playing time. And then 3, you have really short arms, man. Like, he has really, really short arms. You're talking about the position, like, where does he fit best? I don't see a flexible athlete to play in a 3-4 as an outside linebacker. I just don't see it. I think he's a 4-3 hand-the-dirt guy, which he's an undersized player. So he's probably a situational pass rusher that has a nice motor that's going to make his living on special teams. So I think there's some limitations to him. But I think, again, he's a day 3 value, a good football player, but he just has some physical limitations to him.
We're basically out of time. I don't have time for anybody else but one individual. Tough Borland. I see the smile on your face, Ryan. I got him as an undrafted free agent, and I say that because I don't think a guy running a 4.9 40 as a linebacker is going to be in the NFL at all. Even special teams, he maybe a special teams guy. I don't know how long he'll be at special teams because he's so slow and just not athletic and doesn't have the traits to be a professional athlete. Not a knock. He did good things at Ohio State. But that next level, it is the next level. I just don't see where it fits for him.
Yeah, it's a real shame because Tough started off his career really strong, and then he had the Achilles injury, and it just seemed like it zapped his athleticism. It really did. So, I mean, we're working with a linebacker now that is both undersized and not very athletic, which is a terrible combination to have. I mean, he weighed in less than 230 pounds and ran the 4.98 or whatever it was, and honestly, it was a little faster than I thought he was going to run, man. Because, I mean, there were some points where it looked like he was running in quicksand. Like, it was bad, man. Like, I mean, most people would get run by Devonta Smith in that championship game, right? So, like, that's nothing to be ashamed of. But, like, my dude just looked so laborious trying to keep up. Like, it was just painful to watch. So, I think he's a tough kid. Could he find a role for a couple of years as a backup Mike that just does everything right? It's possible. But like you said, he's also not big and not fast. So what is the special teams upside with him? That's one thing that's like undervalued is people are like, oh, he's a scrappy guy. Go play special teams. Well, those guys need to be able to run a little bit. They need to be the good athletes. So I think there's just a lot of limitations. I think he's going to have a hard time to stick. long term, and in a ever evolving passing league, being this limited athletically, I just don't see it with him.
I don't either, man. It's unfortunate after a career like he had at Ohio State. Buckeye fans love him, but take away that one play against Devonta Smith, even though it was a bad scheme situation for Ohio State, saw that all year long. You do see now that I don't see how it fits. Ryan, we did go a little bit longer than expected. You and I both do talk a lot. Let people know that where they can connect with you via social media and follow along during the draft all 3 days as you're giving your insight and opinions about what's going on.
Yeah. So on Twitter, you can follow me at Rise and Drafts. For the live streaming that we'll be doing the draft, the first day I'll be on with the Fanatics podcast, which is a Dolphins podcast that has Richmond Webb and Reason on it, who are awesome guys. So I'll be on with them for day one. And then the last 2 days, I'm going to be on with David Turner and the MAB Sports Group. We have a lot of cool people coming on, from agents to former scouts, players. It's going to be a lot of fun. So just keep an eye out for that. Check out Rise and Drafts on Twitter, and you'll be able to see all the links I'm putting. And then, like I said, the Believe in NFL Draft Prospect podcast and Mav_sports, Mav Sports Take that we did, the podcast we do every week. It's a lot of stuff is keep going out. I got a couple of cool announcements in the future as well, but for now, that's where you can follow me on draft day.
You guys can always follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. Be with us back tomorrow. Went a little bit longer today. Try to get it back a little at the right timeline tomorrow, as we will discuss what happens for the Buckeyes on day one of the draft, and then also what's going to happen, more predictions for day 2 and day 3 of this year's NFL draft.